Hello and welcome to the Chatterbox Letters podcast. I am going to be reading my very large like chatter letter to my listeners. This book, aka Chatter Letter, is called Holes. I hope you will enjoy as I read Holes in audio format. I will be reading chapter by chapter so it will seem interesting as you are curious to know the whole story of its entirety. Excuse me. Introducing Holes by Louis Shakar. I will be reading chapter 10. All right, let me go ahead and get chapter 10 ready to read. Stanley had no trouble falling asleep, but morning came too quickly. Every muscle and joint in his body ached. He tried to get out of bed, but he didn't think it was possible, but his body hurt more than it had the day before. It wasn't just his arms and back, but his legs, ankles, and waist also hurt. The only thing that got him out of the bed was knowing that every second he wasted meant he was 1 second closer to rising of the sun. He hated the sun. He could hardly lift his spoon during breakfast, and then he was out on the lake, his spoon replaced by a shovel. He found a crack in the ground and began his second hole. He stepped on the shovel blade and pushed on the very back of the shaft with the base of his thumb. This hurts less than trying to hold the shaft with his blistered fingers. As he dug, he carefully dumped the dirt far away from the hole. He needed to save the area around the hole for when the hole got much deeper. He didn't know if he'd ever get that far. X-ray was right. The second hole was the hardest. It would take a miracle. As long as the sun wasn't out yet, he removed his cap and used it to help protect his hands. Once the sun rose, he would have to put it back on his head. That means his cap. His neck and forehead had been badly burned the day before. He took one shovelful at a time, and he tried not to think of the awesome task that lay ahead of him. After an hour or so, his sore muscles seemed to loosen up a bit. He grunted as he tried to stick his shovel into the dirt. His cap slipped out from under his fingers, and the shovel fell free. He let it lie there. He took a drink from his canteen. He guessed that the water truck should be coming soon, but he didn't finish all the water. In case he was wrong. He leaned to wait until he saw the truck before drinking his last drop. The sun wasn't up yet, but its rays arched over the horizon and brought light to the sky. He reached down to pick up his cap, and there next to it he saw a wide, flat rock. As he put his cap on his head, he continued to look down at the rock. He picked it up. He thought he'd see the shape of the fish fossilized in it. He rubbed off some dirt. The outline of the fish became clearer. The sun peeked over the horizon, and he could actually see tiny lines where each one of the fish bones had been. He looked at the barren land all around him. True, everyone referred to this area as the lake, but it was still hard to believe that the excuse me that the dry wasteland was once full with water. Next page. Then he remembered what Mr. Sir and Mr. Podensky had both said. If he dug up anything interesting, he should report it to one of them. If the warden liked it, he would get the rest of the day off. He looked back down at the fish. He find is miracle. He continued to dig through very slowly as he waited for the water truck. He didn't want to bring attention to his find, afraid that one of the other boys might try to take it from him. He tossed a rock face down beside the dirt pile as it had no special value. A short while later, he saw the cloud of dirt heading across the lake. The truck stopped and the boys lined up. They always lined up in the same order. Stanley realized no matter who got there first, X-ray was always at the front of the line. Then came armpit, squid, zigzag, magnet, and zero. Stanley got in line behind zero. He was glad to be at the back of the line, so no one would notice the fossil. His pants had very large pockets, but the rock still made a bulge. Hold on for a moment. Mr. Podensky filled each boy canteen until Stanley was the only one left. I found something, Stanley said, taking it out from his pocket. Mr. Podensky reached for Stanley's canteen, but Stanley handed him the rock instead. What's this? It's a fossil, said Stanley. See the fish? Mr. Podensky looked again at it. See, you can even see all the little bones, said Stanley. Interesting, said Mr. Podensky. Let me have your canteen. Stanley handed it to him. Mr. Podensky filled it, then returned it. So I get the rest of the day off. What for? You know, you said if I found something interesting, the warden would give me the day off. Mr. Podensky laughed as he gave the fossil back to Stanley. Sorry, Stanley. The warden isn't interested in fossils. Let me see that, said Magnet, taking the rock from Stanley. Stanley continued to stare at Mr. Podensky. Hey, Zigzag, dig this rock. Cool, said Zigzag. Stanley saw his fossil being passed around. I don't see nothing, said X-Ray. He took off his glasses, wiped them on his dirty clothes, and put them back on. See, look at the little fishy, said Armpit. All right. That is the end of chapter 10. It was a little interesting this time around, chapter 10. I kind of really enjoyed it. But the only thing I had a problem with is that the warden didn't like Stanley's flat rock. I mean, it had a fossil in it, for God's sake. I mean, that's interesting enough to give Stanley the day off. But when you are in a camp as hard as Camp Green Lake and everything seems hard, and I just can't understand the warden, Mr. Podansky, Mr. Sir, in a whole lot of ways. I can't understand them. But they did tell Stanley that they did, if he found anything interesting, he can have the whole day off. And I believe that was a lie too for Stanley, but that is in the book of Holes, excuse me. All right. I want everybody to like, share, subscribe to my podcast. Hit that notification button to know when I go live. Ring that bell for updates on my podcast. If you have a chatter letter that you would like to have broadcast on my podcast, please send it to the Chatterbox Letters Podcast, Post Office Box 5556, Lakeland, Florida 33807. Please make sure that your letter, your chatter letter, is clear and discreet. Make sure everything is written accordingly. And I want everybody to know, please do not hesitate to send me your chatter letter. You always procrastinate and send your chatter letter today. Thanks, everyone.